I'm scouting national forest land this morning, and the first thing I want to point out, and there's two reasons I'm here. The first is access. On the national forest, and especially a year like we had this year where there were a lot of people off work and out in the woods, the biggest problem for me became access. Where do I park my truck? In the mountainous terrain, you have very few places where the state, if they're building a road through the national forest, very few pull-offs through there. So if you're counting on just one or two spots to be there for you when you want to hunt them, you need to have more spots than that, because you don't know if there's going to be a camp there or too many trucks to pull off. So the problem I ran into this year was most of my best areas I couldn't even pull a truck off. So hunting them was out of the question unless I got there first, and there were camps set up at most of them, so there was no getting there before them. Once they were there, I had no access. So this area here, I had no trouble accessing, and I was on good bucks in here this year. So what I'm doing, I first scouted this area a year ago and found a lot of good buck sign. I knew there had to been a good one that had survived the season. So I come in here and hunted him. I saw him on the first day this year. He was a big wide 8-pointer. So I don't know where that deer is bedding. I caught him cruising along the side of the hill next to where some does were bedded. But I'm trying to find where he's bedded today. So I'm going to drop off on the north side of this ridge, and I'm going to ease through this laurel thicket all the way across the mountain and see if I can find any evidence of where this buck's bedding, because I kind of want to target this buck this year. So I'm just off the top of the ridge here, and I've already found a pretty good trail right here in the laurel thicket. I'm just going to start side hilling right here. I'm going to stick to this trail for just a little bit, and if I need to drop a little lower, I will. But for right now, it's a good place to start my scouting as I go around the downwind side of the mountain and make my way through here. A good place to find a buck bed where an old tree's fallen over or something and created a flat spot on the side of the mountain up here. So I wanted to show you what kind of stuff I'm walking through here. It's straight up and down hillside. A lot of boulders on the top. And I'm just looking for flats on the side of this mountain where a buck can bed. And I'm easing around it. So I just had a deer run off this hillside right here, and I walked down here to see where it had been bedding, and it was right here. So there's a little trail going in. You got a good rub next to the bed. That's pretty high. Got hair in it. A lot of fresh hair in it. There's rubs right down here on these trees. The first rubs I've seen, and then one in the bed. So this is most likely a buck bedding. Just a flat behind a boulder. I'm always marking all these beds right here. If a deer is using this, and you can sneak up on it in a high wind situation, and if he was using it, it'd be an easy kill. Just slipping right over the ridge up here behind me. So something to think about. I'm starting to find quite a few rubs. I'm right below some thick laurel right off the top of the mountain, and I hunted over here about 400 or 500 yards this year. This past season, that's where I saw those bucks. So it's starting to break out into a little open hardwoods right here down below me. I'm just gonna keep wrapping around the hill. My stand I hunted this year where I saw those bucks were just right over here about 100 yards. And this is the elevation where all the buck sign is and where that big buck was cruising through. Actually, both of them 2 days in a row came through on this elevation, so I'm gonna follow it on out. So here's the intersection of two trails. This is where those bucks were using. My tree stand was up the hill here about 60 yards. And those deer came through this level right here. And there's a lot of rubs through here. When I was sitting in a tree, I saw deer bedded over here on this point a couple of times. Saw a lot of action right over here on this point, but I couldn't really get a shot over here. So I'm kind of looking for a new tree stand right in here. It was a good stand. I could have tagged out 2 mornings in a row. That one buck was too young, and the other one I was messing with my camera, but this spot worked. I mean, I did see 2 nice bucks right here. So I'm probably just gonna move the stand a little bit where I can get a better shot down in here, and just, you know, maybe 30 yards from where I was sitting. So I was hunting right up here about 100 yards away this season, and I think I'm gonna switch a tree, move farther down the hill right here. I just kind of came around the hillside 100 yards and moved down the hill, and I can see the heaviest trails that those bucks were on. We're coming right up through here, and I can see all that real well from right here. I don't even have to get up that high. Another good example of a bed right here on these branches right here above it. And it'd be an awful irritating for a buck to be laying there with those branches over him like that. Probably just where a doe's been laying here lately, or a buck that's already shed his antlers. Doe bedding, I've got small beds around this little point on the ridge here. And there's doe droppings everywhere around it. Got another doe bedding area here. Big scrape right here. A lot of doe droppings all over the hillside. There's a bed there. Lots of hair in it. There's a bed right there on top of that rock outcropping. There's a bed right here. There's a bed right there. Good group of does bedding in here. There's a bed right there. That's at least 5 beds right here in the same spot. And I just ran a deer off down the mountain. It was just standing down there. I thought it was bedded down there, and then I walked up here, found all this. That doe down the hill I bumped was only standing, you know, 40 yards from where all these beds were, and they all got fresh hair in them. Fresh doe droppings on top of the hillside here. So good doe bedding area. I'll mark it down. So I just jumped a doe out of this bed here. It's 2 or 3 does, and oh, there's one right there. Bedded right here in the same spot. I'm trying to look for where the start of there's a laurel thicket right here in front of me somewhere. I want to know where it started. I was trying to find a spot on this end of the laurel thicket. I think it starts basically right here, but there was a whole bunch of does bedded right here. Good information. Those does are on this heavy trail right here. I'm starting to find really good buck sign on it. Well, I found the laurel thicket. This is where all the buck bedding ought to be, over on this side through here somewhere. I'm gonna assume there's some bucks bedded not too far away from those does over here in this real heavy laurel thicket. And when I come back and hunt this year, because I will, I'll be hunting just off the other side of the mountain. If you go down below here, it's private. Most of this laurel thicket right here in this chunk is private, and I'm standing on the public at the top side of it. So I can't hunt that laurel thicket anyways. I just gotta figure out how to hunt around it. I'm pretty sure that's where the bucks are bedding now that I've looked at the whole area. And I know where a lot of the does are bedding during November. That might be all it takes to get me on a good buck right here. So I'll probably back out, head right back over here about 75 or 100 yards and look for a good place. That's where all the trails are coming around this rock outcropping behind me. Rock outcropping right here. This is nothing but rock boulders across the top. Well, they end down there about 75, 100 yards. I'm gonna look for a tree down there. I think there'll be a whole lot of action first thing in the morning and last thing in the evening right over there. Right on, I mean, I won't be 50, 75 yards from all this bedding. Here I got another worn out bed. It's absolutely wore out. Got a few rubs and stuff around it. A lot of big clumped up droppings. It's probably a buck bed. That's a single bed. There's no other beds right here around this knob. It looks like a buck bed. But he's been bedding in a lot here since season's over. I came through here during the season and that bed wasn't here. He's been bedding here, you know, late season. There's crop fields down here below us. Well, not crop fields, but grass fields with cows and stuff. So he's bedding there. It's a late season bed. I wouldn't expect him to be bedding there during hunting season. There's my first real evidence that there's a decent buck still alive in here. Pretty good track. So I know at least one decent buck made it through the season in here. Gives me a little hope.